Turning our talents to the NBA, and the finals are now officially locked in. Phoenix will be playing the Milwaukee Bucks. It's a 2-2-1-1-1 playoff format with Phoenix owning home court advantage at the moment. These two sides played in the regular season, Brendan. Both fixtures were won by Phoenix by a single point. Also, notable stat from this the series so far, I guess you could call it, Giannis has accumulated 80 points in the two matches he's played against Phoenix. Some notable matchups here. DeAndre Ayton versus Brook Lopez. Could we see Devin Booker versus PJ Tucker? Another note, just a quick stat for the intangibles punters there. PJ Tucker has eliminated one of his ex-Rockets teammates in every round of the finals thus far. Why does that stand out, you ask? Because Chris Paul is one of his ex-teammates.
Yeah, interesting. And you've got Chris Paul versus Holiday here. My notes around that sort of suggest that Drew Holiday is by far and away the best point guard that Chris Paul will have come up against so far in the playoffs. I mean, against the Lakers, he had Schroeder, he had Campazzo a fair bit for the Nuggets, and then he had Patrick Beverley. I want to ask you about the Ayton and Lopez, and then you've got here Crowder and Giannis. I would have thought that Ayton would need to stay closer to the rim, and he wouldn't be on Lopez that much, because Lopez goes out for the pick and roll and can shoot.
Good question. It's one of those tricky ones. Obviously, with Brook Lopez playing for Milwaukee, it means you stretch the floor and, you can have big shooting out wide. Not to mention Bobby Portis comes off the bench. Who knows what's going to happen with Giannis. I do think, though, Ayton will end up guarding Lopez out there.
Yep.
And the other part to this as well, mentioned obviously about that Drew Holiday, Chris Paul matchup. The biggest question is going to be later in the game, Chris Paul loves coming off on balls, and essentially that switch, most of the time in the NBA, most teams will switch. Who is going to guard him? Is it going to be a Giannis? And if Giannis isn't there, who's going to be the other big? Because essentially it's a big switching on.
Yeah.
And Ayton will roll to the ring. So if you notice most of the points that Ayton scores, it's essentially rolling the ring for alley-oop dunks or essentially mid-range jumpers or little baby hooks and things like that. So that's a question there. For me, mate, there's so many different matchups. And sorry, the other matchup there is the bench v. the bench. You've got Torrey Craig, ex-Brisbane Bullet. You've got Cameron Payne, who has come out from nowhere. You've got Saric, and those three versus Bobby Portis. And again, if Giannis comes back in, Bobby Portis, who's got just crazy eyes, but that's a story for another day. You got Teague and you got Connington.
Yep.
So, and then, we haven't even touched on the matchup potentially between, we got Crowder v. Giannis.
Yeah. He's undersized, though, and that speaks by the fact that Giannis had those 80 points across 2 games already. I think the flip side of things and the Suns defending the pick and roll will be interesting because Giannis is very difficult to defend by himself. But throughout the other series that I mentioned, Nuggets had no Jamal Murray, and there was no one else really knocking down shots. And the Bucks outside shooters have been doing that, and the same with the Clippers. No one was really knocking them down besides PG.
Yeah, you've been very quick to point out Phoenix's run's been a little bit easier. And let's be honest, Milwaukee's getting through that Brooklyn series, which was just a battle the whole way through.
But they also got Atlanta when they didn't have Trae Young, wasn't his best. That's got to be said. So you've got to get lucky, but to get 3 series in a row, I think it has helped them. I'm not saying they wouldn't have won, but it's definitely helped.
And obviously, as well, from a coaching battle, we got Monty Williams versus Mike Budenholzer. I think I said that right. So for me, mate, I guess the last thing I need to ask you, Brendan, please finish this sentence. The winner of the 2021 NBA Championship is...
an asterisk. So I've got here in my notes, Richard. It all depends on Giannis for me. I think if he plays, the Bucks win. So my line is Giannis plays 5 or more games, the Bucks win. If he plays 4 or less, the Suns will win. And I did as much research as I could today, Richard, to find if he was going to play game 1. He's listed as questionable. I would imagine if it's less 50-50, they'd sit him and hope he gets right for the rest of the series. But you never know. It's hard to keep those superstars out. So I'm going to say he does play more than 5 and the Bucks win. Where do you sit?
You know where I sit.
With your little buddy, your little quarterback.
My quarterback. I'm going with...
He needs this too, I think. Because
100% he does.
His record deep in playoffs isn't ideal, and it's not always his fault, but this would be a huge feather in the cap.
Absolutely, Brendan. Chris Paul, from a quarterback and from a point guard perspective, is the only point guard I want in a finals matchup. I think he's the best point guard in playoffs. period.
And what about game?
I'm not talking about these two. I'm talking about everyone. That includes Steph Curry, by the way.
Really?
Yes. I think he's the best.
Oh,
and the
that's
most
a
important,
statement.
He's a coach.
There's our sound clip, mate.
He is a coach on the court as well. And there will be things that he does that other point guards won't that will get his team an edge. And more importantly, he just looks angry all the time and wants to win.
What do you reckon he said to Pat Beverly?
Oh, it would have been great. But more importantly, didn't he light them up?
Yeah, exactly.
That was
phenomenal.
fantastic.
Especially going 0 for 6 in the previous game. Comes out, goes, I think, 7 for 8.
And he doesn't really shoot a lot of threes, to be honest. Like, if you have a look at his stats holistically, he doesn't really get them up. Now, the other thing I like here is, even if Giannis plays, I still think Phoenix win. Because Torrey Craig has been doing a defensive job for a long period of time. So they do have options. Hypothetically, you might see a Phoenix lineup down the stretch where it's Craig and Crowder guarding Giannis and Middleton. I've got Phoenix in 6.
Yeah, I mean, that's plausible. That's more than plausible. I get it. I think, here's one for you. If Giannis starts shooting threes, you know the Bucks are in trouble.
But and that's the thing, mate, he could go for 40 and they still lose.
Yeah.
And Chris Middleton, he's done some really good things. I don't know if he's going to be good enough though. You know, you talk about was Devin Booker still the best player?
Okay, how about let's play devil's advocate here. Yeah, Devin Booker's a gun. No questions there. If Chris Paul somehow, for some reason, doesn't play...
Oh, they're cooked.
They're cooked.
They are 100% cooked.
Before we move on, I reached out to a good mate of ours who lives in Arizona, Chaz Donati. He's got his own sports podcast called Daily Chatter with a good friend of his. And obviously, being in Arizona, he's a big Suns man. And I asked him for his score prediction. They'll obviously do their own preview on their own show. He said Suns in 6. So that's exactly what you have, Richard. He thinks the extra rest that the Suns got while Milwaukee was still playing and CP3 getting all that rest is going to do them a bunch of favours. So thanks for that, Chaz, and we're going to look to do some sort of collaboration with the Daily Chatter moving forward.